6 years ago, Russell Westbrook had one of the greatest individual seasons of all time. He averaged 31.6 points per game, 10.7 rebounds, and 10.4 assists, becoming the second player to ever average a triple-double over the course of a full season, the first since Oscar Robertson in 1962, 55 years prior. He also broke Big O's triple-double record by racking up 42 triple-doubles in a single season, a feat that won't be repeated for a very long time. He led a really mediocre Thunder roster to 46 wins in an incredibly tough Western Conference. He hit several game winners, dominated every single night, and was deservingly so rewarded with the 2016-17 NBA MVP award. He was incredible. However, Russ has always been a pretty polarizing player, and there are a lot of people trying to rewrite history about him due to his poor play this past season for the Los Angeles Lakers. So, I'm here to give you a Thunder fan's perspective on Russ's MVP season and help you appreciate just how special it was. Let's talk about it. When I started watching basketball about a decade ago, I didn't have a favorite team. I was the first person in my family to start watching the NBA, and being from Virginia, the closest team is about 4 or 5 hours away. So I just kind of started watching games and eventually became a Thunder fan for a variety of reasons. I really liked the color scheme. I thought the name Thunder was just kind of cool. They were a young and upcoming squad, but primarily because of Russell Westbrook. He was an insanely athletic guard that gave every single possession 110%, and he became my favorite player almost instantly. Don't get me wrong, I was a big KD fan too, but Russ was always kind of my guy. He was the first basketball jersey that I ever owned. I owe a lot of my initial love for basketball to him. I wouldn't be here talking to you now if Russell Westbrook wasn't one of the first players I watched. Additionally, the Thunder quickly became one of the best teams in the league, and it felt like a championship would come someday. Alongside watching Russ's ascension to superstardom, it was so much fun. However, since I'm a Thunder fan, I'm not allowed to be happy for too long, and as you know, in 2016, the Thunder went up 3-1 on the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals, and then they mysteriously canceled the playoffs, which I still don't understand why they did that. However, following this, on July 4th of 2016, Kevin Durant left the Thunder for the Golden State Warriors on a day that I will never forget. 16-year-old me was shell-shocked and really mad. I knew the Thunder were no longer truly contenders and that Russ was just kind of going to be on his own as the lone star of the team. And on that day, I remember telling my dad, and I swear this happened, this sounds like one of those like LeBron like fake lie type situations, I swear this happened, I told my dad, Russ is going to average a triple-double this season. And he did that, and he did a lot more. In the first game of the season, Russ put up 32, 12, and 9 and got one middle finger from a fan in a 6-point win over Philly. A really good game, but not necessarily unheard of for Russell Westbrook. Then in Game 2, he became the 5th player ever to record a 50-point triple-double with 51 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists in a 3-point win over the Phoenix Suns. Now this was the game that really set the tone for the rest of the season. Russ had to complete a feat that only had been done 6 times prior to this game, and not since 1975, just for the Thunder to get a 3-point win over the Phoenix Suns, who would finish the season with a record of 24-58, second worst in the entire NBA that season. In order for the Thunder to have any success against any team, Russ was most of the time going to put the team on his back. Let's talk about the team while we're on that subject. This is the 2016-17 Oklahoma City Thunder roster. The starting lineup consisted of Russell Westbrook, Victor Oladipo, and a rookie Domantas Sabonis, who the Thunder acquired both of in a trade with the Orlando Magic on draft night, Andre Roberson, and Steven Adams. You probably recognize all of those names. Off the bench, the Thunder had guys like Samaj Kristan, Jeremy Grant, Anthony Morrow, Alex Sabrinas, Taj Gibson, Enes Kanter, Joffrey Laverne, Kyle Singler, Doug McDermott, and Cameron Payne. It's a rough group to say the least. Not including Russell Westbrook, 10 of the 18 players that played for the Thunder over the course of the season are no longer playing in the NBA, and only 3 of them are starters in the league right now. Additionally, the Thunder ranked dead last in the league in three-point percentage at 32.8% that season, which is probably the last thing you want for a Westbrook-led team. The vision is always to put shooters around these hyper-athletic point guards like Russ, who's also a great playmaker, so he can drive and attack the basket and kick out the shooters. However, this team could not shoot at all. They shot the same 3-point percentage as this year's Detroit Pistons, who went 23-59. Russ's teammates shot 30.9% on what was classified as wide open threes that season. These are wide open threes, not contested threes, wide open threes, meaning that nobody is near them. They hit them at a 30.9% clip. Shooting was a massive problem for this team. There are also no other creators on the roster outside of Russ. Russ's teammates shot 58.2% on all 2-point attempts off of passes from Russ this season, and just 48.6% on all other 2-point attempts that he didn't set up. That is a 9.6 drop percentage inefficiency. You would expect guys to shoot better off of plays made by their point guard, of course, but that is an absurd drop. That's abysmal. On threes, his teammates shot 33.1% off of his passes and 31.4% on all other threes for a 1.7% drop. If he wasn't creating for others, it really just was not happening. Russ had to do everything offensively. He had to set that team up in pretty much every single scenario. And even when he kicked out the shooters, they still missed a lot of the time, even when they were wide open. Now, obviously, the bench is pretty weak, but you might see guys like Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis in the starting lineup, and both of them would go on to be all-stars down the line. However, in this situation, they were still really young and not really ready to be high-quality starters on a contending team. It was an unprecedented carry job by Russell Westbrook this season. But back to Westbrook himself. Things started going really well for the Thunder, going 6-1 in their first 7 games. Russ was averaging 30.5 points per game, 8.4 rebounds, and 9.9 assists through this initial stretch, also putting up 2 triple-doubles. However, the Thunder would lose their next 4 games, and by November 23rd, they'd fallen to 8-8 on the season. Russ was still putting up great numbers, 32 points per game, 9.6 rebounds, 10.5 assists, and 5 triple-doubles, but it wasn't enough. He had to take it to another level. And this is a great time to go over one of the most polarizing parts of Westbrook's MVP season, the triple-double. A lot of people think that Russ's triple-double accumulation was simply stat padding and not actually that impressive, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The season prior, Russell Westbrook led the NBA with 18 triple-doubles, and he led the league with 11 the year before that in 2014-2015. Between that season and the 1997-98 season, there were only 2 years where someone had double-digit triple-doubles, and that was Jason Kidd in 2007 and in 2008. Prior to Russ, nobody in the modern NBA was putting up triple-doubles like him. During and after this season, triple-double numbers skyrocketed league-wide. Across the entire of NBA history, the 6 seasons with the most triple-doubles league-wide were these past 6 seasons. A lot of people look back on this season now and think that triple-doubles aren't that big of a deal because they've become so common due to this trend that Russ really started. Others think Russ was just stat padding all season for his triple-doubles. Mainly, people cite the fact that most of Russ's rebounds were uncontested this season. But fewer people know that this was an explicit strategy by the Oklahoma City Thunder. This season, the Thunder were top 5 in transition points, a direct byproduct of letting Russ, probably, in my opinion, the most athletic guard of all time, grab the ball and immediately sprint down the court to create an advantage for both himself and his team. We've already established that Russ's teammates shot about 10% better on looks that he generated for them, so why not get the ball in his hands as fast as possible? And for those of you that think Russ's triple-doubles didn't lead to winning, the Thunder were 33-9 when Russ got a triple-double and 12-28 when he didn't get one. As for Russell Westbrook racking up 42 triple-doubles to break Robertson's record of 41 in a single season, Robertson's record was seen as one of the most unbreakable records in basketball prior to this season. Let's hear what some legends have to say.
Meant to be broken, but wow.
I know.
I mean, Oscar, whew.
Nope. There's not one guy on this planet who can do it. I think that's one of those records that will never be touched.
I don't think that's going to happen either, not for a whole year.
What Oscar did with the triple-double, that would never happen ever again. Never in history of the game.
Needless to say, Russ did something that many people, including NBA legends, thought was impossible. But back to the season, over the next 7 games, Russ put up 7 straight triple-doubles, with the team going 6-1 over that span, tying Michael Jordan for the second longest triple-double streak of all time, a feat that he would repeat again later in the season towards the end of the year, and a couple years later, he would end up setting the record streak with 11 games. In the fourth game of his first 7-game triple-double streak, Russ would hit a ridiculous game-tying 3 to send the game to overtime versus the Washington Wizards, where OKC would end up winning. This was one of many clutch shots and moments Russ had over the course of this season, another big piece of his MVP case for that season. This season, Russ averaged 10 points per game in fourth quarters, which led the NBA just ahead of MVP candidate Isaiah Thomas, who averaged 9.8 points per game. Russ also led the league in clutch time scoring, situations where the game is within 5 points with 5 or less minutes remaining, with 6.2 points per game. The Thunder also outscored opponents by a ridiculous 21.7 points per 100 possessions with Russ on the court in crunch time. SB Nation put together a great list of Russ's clutchest moments that I will link below, and let me rattle some of them off for you. Russ hits a shot versus Orlando to send the game to OT after the Thunder were down 14 in a game where he puts up 57, 13, and 11 in an overtime win. Russ goes on to score 12 points in the last 3.5 minutes, including a game winner against the Dallas Mavericks. He went on a solo 15-0 run in the last 2 minutes and 35 seconds of a game against Memphis to win. He would score 11 of the Thunder's final 13 points and hit a game winner to beat the Jazz. He hit a dagger 3 versus the Celtics that got him and Oladipo dancing. He scored 19 of OKC's last 22 points to beat the Blazers one game. He dunked on Clint Capella with his offhand as a dagger versus Houston. He got an and one versus the Jazz to win the game, second game winner versus the Jazz this season. And he scored the last 15 points for OKC, including one of the greatest game winners in NBA history versus the Denver Nuggets. But that last moment happened right at the end of the year and was one of the greatest moments in basketball for me. So let's quickly go over some of these other great moments from the season before we get to that one. The date is April 9th, 2017. Russell Westbrook has done the impossible. 5 days prior, Russ recorded his 41st triple-double to tie Oscar Robertson's record. There are 3 games left in the season for Russ to record just one more to set the all-time record at 42 triple-doubles in a season. Memphis is also just a few games behind the Thunder in the playoff race, and they're currently sitting at the 6th seed. It's a huge game for the Thunder. Meanwhile, the Denver Nuggets are on the verge of elimination from playoff contention. They have to win this game, or their season is over and they will be out of the playoffs for the 4th straight season. It's by far their most important game of the year. The ball tips and immediately it's a barn burner. Russell Westbrook dominates in the first half, putting up 23 points, 12 boards, 6 assists on 64.3% shooting, meaning he is well on pace to record his record-setting triple-double. The rest of the team has a combined 29 points on just 38% shooting, so it's a typical OKC game from that season. Meanwhile, the Denver Nuggets lead at halftime, 43-42. It's a close one. Russ adds 9 more points and 3 assists in the third quarter, with Thunder legend Taj Gibson adding 8, but the Nuggets win the quarter by 11 points due to a 22-point quarter from future Thunder legend Danilo Gallinari. The Thunder go into the fourth down 12 with Russ 1 dime away from history. Russ sits for the first 3 minutes of the quarter and then checks in for Victor Oladipo with the Thunder down 10. 3 minutes later, they go down 14 after a Jokic hook shot. The Thunder need Russ to take over. He hits a 3 to cut the deficit to 11. Emmanuel Mudiay counters with a bucket on the other end, and then Russ makes history. He kicks the ball in the corner, and he knocks down a 3 to cut the deficit to 10 with 4:17 to go. But most importantly, this gives Russ his 10th assist, giving him triple-double number 42 and breaking what was once seen as an unbreakable record. 40 seconds later, Russ scores to cut the deficit to 8. Jokic extends it back to 10, where it stays until 2:27 left in the game. Russ hits a layup. Jokic hits Russ with a flagrant foul and gets a tech for arguing. Russ hits all 3 free throws, cutting the deficit to 5. Jokic makes 2 free throws on the other end, making it a 7-point game, and the deficit stays here until 47 seconds left, when Russ draws a 3-point foul committed by Jamal Murray. Russ knocks down all 3 free throws. Oladipo draws a charge with 30 seconds left and the Thunder down 4. Timeout OKC. Russ makes a quick layup off an inbound from Kyle Singler to cut the deficit to 2. Rather than foul, the Thunder let things play out. Jokic misses a shot, Russ secures the board, his 16th of the night, and OKC calls a timeout with 3 seconds to go. Most of you probably know what comes next, but for those of you that don't, I'll just let you watch.
Thunder is out of timeouts. Adams gives it back to Russ. Deep shot! Get it! What a perfect ending to a historic day!
Russ calls game. He caps off a game where he broke what was seen as an unbeatable record with a buzzer beater that just seems impossible. It's straight out of a movie. This 3 caps off a 14-point comeback in the fourth quarter. This 3 gives Russ his 15th straight point for the Thunder and his 18th in the fourth quarter alone. This 3 gives him 50 points on the game. This 3 eliminates the Denver Nuggets from the playoffs. And this 3 cements Russell Westbrook as the NBA's most valuable player. It really was the perfect ending to a historic day. A couple games later, the Thunder would end their season as the 6th seed in the Western Conference with a record of 47-35. Heading into the playoffs, they would end up losing to the 3-seeded Houston Rockets in 5 games, a series where the Thunder were just honestly absolutely outmatched. Russ would go on to put up 37.5 points per game, 11.6 rebounds, and 10.8 assists, including one of the best executed free throw line plays I've ever seen with Steven Adams. However, the whole team dropped in efficiency, Russ included, with the team shooting just 31% from 3 on the series as the shooting woes continued. And in a really weird twist, Andre Roberson, who only averaged 6.5 points per game on the season and was never much of a scorer, ended up being the Thunder's second leading scorer with 11.5 points per game on the series and the second best offensive player next to Russ. It was an underwhelming end to what was such a magical season, but it was one that kind of made sense as the Thunder far overachieved due to Russ's heroics. Russ would end up being awarded with the NBA's Most Valuable Player award, beating out James Harden, who would win it the following season, former teammate. As a Thunder fan, I can truly say that this season was some of the most fun I've ever had watching basketball. Every single night when I watched, I knew I was in to see something incredible. Seeing your favorite player win MVP is something that I hope you all get to experience at some point in your sports fandom, especially if you're an OKC fan. Regardless of how Russ's career ends up, whether he wins a ring or not, whether he bounces back from this past season, nothing will diminish the fact that he is a first ballot Hall of Famer and one of the greatest point guards to ever play the game. Nothing can take away his MVP award, and nothing will take away from the fact that he had one of the greatest individual seasons we have ever seen on a basketball court. I know this video was a little bit different from my usual style, but I had a lot of fun making it, so please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed and made it to this point in the video. It helps me out more than you can imagine. I appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.